This is Linda Williams. Welcome to another episode of Sister to Sister. It's a series of conversations between me and my sister Susan about the soul, about destiny, about life itself. I want to carry this conversation and the significance of the tongue a little further, but first I want to read James 3. And what I never realized, Susan, was that James 3 begins by talking to, I forget who wrote this, but anyway, he's writing to the person he addresses this to, which was probably Timothy or James. It's a letter of James, probably to Timothy, I don't know. I'm no expert, but basically, I never realized that this thing about the tongue came in the context of him talking about everybody shouldn't become teachers because of the major responsibility that is. I'm starting with James 3:1. Let not many of you become teachers, my brethren, knowing that as such we shall incur a stricter judgment. For we all stumble in many ways. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body as well. Now, if we put the bits into the horses' mouths so that they may obey us, we direct their entire body as well. Behold, the ships also, though they are so great and are driven by strong winds and are still directed by a very small rudder, wherever the inclination of the pilot desires. So also is the tongue. It's a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. Behold, how great a force is set aflame by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire, the very world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members as that which defiles the entire body and sets on fire the course of our life, and is set on fire by hell. For every species of beasts and birds, of reptiles and creatures of the sea is tamed, and has been tamed by the human race. But no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil and full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come both blessings and cursings, my brethren. These things ought not to be this way. Does a fountain send out from the same opening both fresh and bitter water? Can a fig tree, my brethren, produce olives, or a vine produce figs? Neither can salt water produce fresh. Who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show by his good behavior his deeds in the gentleness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant and so lie against the truth. So basically it goes on to talk, and it talks about how bitterly this tongue is, how it's forked. You know, remember back in the old days, we used to watch the cowboys and Indians, and the Indians would say, white man talk with forked tongue. Yeah. In the hood, we talk about you talking out both sides of your face. See? Yeah. And we can do one and the other, but let's talk about how out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And basically, if you connect this passage with the passage that says that out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, then we can understand that what's coming up out of our mouths is directly related to the condition of our very souls. Yeah. And so we've got to talk about how important this reality and this truth is to our purpose, our mission, and our destiny. Yeah. I'm just going to put it like this. Now, there's some videos out there on Facebook that say basically the same thing. Don't tell everybody your business. Don't tell everybody your business. Every time something good happens, you telling everybody. And every time the Lord speaks something to you, you telling everybody. There are very few people in your life that can be trusted with those deeper things, those deeper spiritual things that are related to what God told you to do. And if he told you to do it, not every joker, I don't care how Spiritual they are. Not every joker on earth is going to get it. Not every joker on earth is going to understand it. And not every joker on earth is meant to be a part of that destiny for you. And so when we consider what Susan said earlier on about the fact that people can begrudge you stuff, they can talk negativity into the spirit for you. Trust me, if God told you to go to point B, it ain't going to be no easy win to get to point B. All the forces in hell and every scar in your soul is designed to keep you from point B. So why would you fuel the flames of the enemy in that regard by telling your dream what God told you, your rhema word, your directions from God to every joker out there that really doesn't mean you well?
Yeah. When you out of abundance of heart, the mouth speaks. It's like the Lord been talking to me about the words of our mouth, but then He started talking to me about unforgiveness again.
Okay.
And that's just been, I think prophesied to the body of Christ maybe 4 years ago that in our growth as a body, that we'd come up he showed me a ladder, and he showed me us coming up different rungs of the ladder. But now the rung of forgiveness was there, and he said, and no one will get past this rung lest they forgive.
Wow.
In other words, it's not like, okay, some of the rungs maybe some people matured past, and other, this was like, this is not an option.
Yes.
And I tried to express that to people, but I don't think people got it. Here we are 5 years later, and he's still saying that, so that means we still haven't done it.
Okay.
And I was talking to somebody recently, and they were talking about how somebody had been slandering them, and it really hurt that person's heart, And I was sitting there, and I was like, wow, Lord, that's rough. And then he showed me this.
Okay.
He said, he said in the scriptures, because he gave me a prophetic word for that person to tell them that they needed to go to the person that was slandering them, and that their freedom was tied up in the fact that they would have the opportunity to just cut loose on her and tell her what she didn't like about her.
Okay.
And I said, and when she gets done, God's going to reveal to you who she's really talking to. And they're like, what do you mean? Well, I've had it where people have gotten to the point where they were slandering me. I wound up confronting them. They go off, and then when they get done going off on me, I go, okay, so I remind you of your mother.
Oh, powerful.
And that's all it takes.
Yes, sir.
Or I watch somebody who just verbally just was constantly ripping my pastor up, and yet my pastor was constantly doing to help this person. So I finally just said, your unforgiveness towards your father is you're transposing that onto pastor because you see him as the father figure that you never had.
Okay.
So even though he didn't do anything to you, your heart is so wounded that father means anger. And
wow.
And you're pushing that anger back at him, and yet he's helping you, and he's done nothing to you.
Wow.
And I said, you have to see that. Well, it took that person about 2 years to see it, but when they did, they got totally free.
Wow.
So, and so I really believe that God is going to set this person free when this person goes to them and opens themselves up to be able to be the scapegoat for a minute, because it's not going to be pretty when that person's spewing.
Yes, sir.
But let them spew. I said, because it really depends on how bad you want them free. Are you willing to take it?
Well, Susan, what's so deep about that is that these things go on in our interactions with people on a daily basis without our ever knowing it.
Yes.
It's a form of living in the past. So I'm in the here and now 30 years later. In the case that you're talking about, ladies in the here and now multiple decades later, reacting to some crap from 30 years ago in the here and now. You know what it does? It destroys relationships.
Yeah.
It makes divine connections impossible.
Yes.
We have got to get over this. And people, if you guys get a chance, you have got to go to Google Keith Battle. He has a 16-part series on purpose that will drop you to your knees. Okay? And he is being so real, so down to earth, and so rubber meets the road with this, that it is a powerful series that everybody with a heart for God needs to listen to. And in it, he talks about this forgiveness piece, Susan. And he says that we got to get an understanding of the fact that forgiveness doesn't mean let that joker back in your life to mess with you again.
Right.
That just means that you have decided you're going to forgive them to free yourself up to move forward. That they still have to build trust in your life if they're supposed to be there at all. Sometimes it's us putting too much emphasis on a meantime type of thing. But even if it goes all the way back to your childhood, it's going to take an act of God and the grace of God to call your attention to when those things are creeping up. Because the bottom line is this: you're a divine connection for somebody. Somebody's a divine connection for you. Relationships are important and very key. And not everybody who's a divine connection for you is going to psychoanalyze you enough to love you through that mess. Sometimes people just take what they getting thrown at them and move the heck on. And if we don't forgive people, we cannot heal. You have got to forgive in order to heal. And that doesn't mean that you forgiving people doesn't mean, see, we want to tie forgiveness with people getting their comeuppance. See, we don't want to forgive unless we get them back or we see them get theirs. You know what? You might never see them get theirs. You might never see that. Why is your act and will to forgive tied to how much pain that person gets behind what they did to you, as wrong as they were? Bottom line is this: they can plant seed in their own harvest, you can plant seed in yours, and as long as you fail to forgive, you are remaining the wrong that was done to you.
Yeah, and as long as you're waiting to see the fallout fall on them for what they did to you, then you got to do more than just forgive, because now you got an offense.
Yes.
See, and like I told my sister on the last set that we did, I told her, I said the definition of offense, and when I went to say that, I didn't have a definition. The Lord gave this to me in the moment. It was funny, but it's true. I said offense is this: what I'm doing, where I'm going, what I'm focused on is more important than anything you have in your life going on. And I'm angry with you now because you don't realize that.
Right.
So, in this scenario, somebody does something to you, you say, well, somebody says, well, you got to forgive them. And you're like, okay, well, I forgive him, I let it go. But then you're like, and he's still sitting over there with his new wife, and they got money up the woo-woo, and they haven't paid the child support, and I just can't wait till they arrest him, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so this is it. If you are really healed and really forgiven, and all the trash from the fallout from that scenario that caused you to be upset and not forgive, when that's all cleaned up, you don't wish evil against the other person.
Right.
Seriously, right. You do not wish evil against the other person. You then are back in line with the heart of Christ, and you do not wish evil. If you're still wishing some kind of negative thing on somebody, then you haven't forgiven them, and I'm going to kind of tell you that you're now in the level of offense.
Yep.
Now, when it comes to that, you got a whole nother level of stuff you got to deal with besides just making the choice to say I forgive somebody. Mm-hmm. It goes way deeper than that.
Yes.
Because what's going to have to happen to you is you're going to have a mind change.
Yep.
And you're going to have to realize that that person was that person before you met them.
Mm-hmm.
And that they didn't just change up and acquire some new part of their personality and their makeup before they met you, after they met you.
Right.
And so here you are mad at the person for being who they are, but you chose that person in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with this picture?
Right.
It's like my daughter the other day. She wanted to bless me. I had been sleeping in my bed. I had a pile of clothes. We're trying to pack and live at the same time. And she threw all the clothes off the bed in a pile. Well, it hit a can of paint, and that can of paint should have never leaked, but it leaked all over the floor, and then there was paint all over my clothes.
Mm-hmm.
She was overwhelmed because the old me would have been like, what's wrong with you? Blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
And I looked at her and I said, now how can I be mad at you for moving the clothes off the bed? If I had done what I was supposed to do, the clothes wouldn't have been there for you to move. So let's take it all the way back to the beginning and who was responsible.
That's good.
That's walking in a heart where you deal with your offense.
Right.
Because what I did was I put her above myself.
Okay.
I put her actions and who she is, I valued it more than myself.
She was trying to help you, yeah.
Yeah, I valued her more than them clothes. That's what it came down to.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it comes down to. So I'm driving down the road. Some old person pulls out in front of me, driving slow as molasses in January. I gotta be somewhere in 10 minutes, and you can't get around them because there's traffic coming from the other side. And you're like, really, really? And you say to yourself out loud, he shouldn't be on the road. He's too old to be driving. If he can't even
oh my goodness,
25, he's doing 25 under the speed limit. Oh my goodness.
Done that.
Okay. Well, here's the deal. In that moment, you have decided that wherever he's going is unimportant,
right,
compared to where you're going.
Right.
You have decided that your time, is way more valuable than his time.
Yep. You
have actually devalued that person down to being someone that you would speak a bunch of negative stuff over.
Right.
And that is the absolute opposite of the kingdom of heaven.
Okay.
That is opposite of what God said. He said you are to always esteem your brother higher than yourself. You know what that means? That means that if I'm going slow like that, he doesn't get this, but if I'm driving slow like that, if I'm going to esteem my brother higher than myself, I pull off the side of the road and let the cars go past me.
Mm.
The other day I was pulling out, Joy goes, Mom, you could have gone 5 times.
Wow.
And I said, yeah, but you know what, Joy? I would rather sit here than to pull out and have to punch it and still have that guy behind me that's already cruising down the road have to slow down because I pulled out in front of him.
Right.
She goes, well, that's really sweet. But that's annoying, but that's sweet.
Well, I hate it.
You were considerate to other people.
So basically, what you did was, you know how you would have hated it, so you didn't do the same thing to them.
Exactly. Because you value them. You value them. Like you value yourself.
But let's go back because, we can forgive somebody by the act of our will and still have to work through the process of healing. When you forgive, you don't automatically get rid of all of the bitterness and the anger that's built up prior to your decision to forgive. You mentioned a mind change. Minds don't change automatically. So I think we need to move into understanding that forgiveness, that the act of forgiveness itself is a decision you make, a quality decision you make before God, that you're going to forgive that person. Now, that doesn't mean that, okay, I've made this quality decision on this date at this time, but if that joker walked in the room right now, that doesn't mean you would lock up, have some kind of feelings. And I'm going to take this beyond just road rage, which is what I really have a problem with. I'm going to get irritated if you're going slow in the slow lane. Get the heck up out my way. I got to go somewhere. I need help in that. But let's take this down to some serious offenses because there's some people who have been raped, some people who have been molested as a child and never been able to tell anybody about it. There's been some serious violence against some people, and it's got them on lockdown where their destiny is concerned. And you can't just get over that with an act of your will and say, oh, okay, I'm just fine. Nah, the Bible tells us that it's a process. As God does the growth work in us, as we submit to that growth work. So while forgiveness is an act of your will, then you got to move into the stage where you ask the Lord to show you that violator, that person who did you wrong, the way he sees them. Because when he looks at that person, he may see what they did, but he also sees what he created. And what he created was not that joker that got twisted up by life and did us harm. He didn't create that person that did us harm. That person that did us harm is the result of what the heck they've been through in life and how it has twisted their God-given character in the complete opposite of what God created. Now, understand that now, once you say you forgive, and you made that quality decision before God, behind that you should be asking, Lord, help me, Lord, to see them the way you see them. What's going to happen with that? God's going to work you through multiple layers of healing to the point where your heart is no longer hardened in that regard. And as he does that, you're going to gain understanding of yourself even through this process. He's going to take you to that little kid that was abused in that rapist, that person that did us wrong, the perpetrators, how they have been hurt so badly in the past. So you might see, instead of that rapist with the gun, you might wind up seeing the little boy cowering in the corner, trembling because somebody hurt him. And this is the way this person's character got twisted out of shape. Well, see, once you do that, in that understanding that you gain through asking him to let you see that person the way he sees them, you gain understanding. And out of understanding comes compassion. Okay? And that compassion allows you to pray for your enemy. He asks us that we need to pray for our enemies and pray blessings on them. You can't step up out of a rape. Decide you're going to forgive as a quality decision and not have to go through multiple layers of healing in order to even get to the point where you can even get out your mouth, Lord, help me see this person the way you see them. But when you do that and the Lord takes you through the multiple healings where you can get an understanding, you gain compassion, you can pray for that person, you are well along your path of purpose and you are freed up to move forward and leverage that experience that you used to consider a part of you. When you became that wrong, anytime you got bitterness, offense, you fail to forgive, you're constantly talking about the situation, you can't even talk about the situation, you're blaming yourself for that situation. Anytime that's going on, you have become the wrong that was done to you. Well, now you only sterilize that through the healing that only God can walk you through. But along that, where his grace goes even further, is that he gives us the grace to leverage that wrong that was done to us toward mission, purpose, and destiny so that we can reach and help others who have gone through the same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted to get a little deeper into this words of our mouth. I want to talk about slander, but I think I'm going to save that for another time. I think that right now, there's a lot to work with right here. Okay. I think that all of us have to go back and, we have to realize that we can't necessarily see ourselves like we are. Mm-hmm. We don't see those triggers, and we don't see sometimes even that we're responding to a trigger. Mm-hmm. We just, think, that's kind of like you would say it if you were verbalizing your day. You'd be like, well, anybody would be upset over that. Mm-hmm. Nobody would just tolerate that.
Right.
But guess what? 9 times out of 10, there's a lot of people that have been healed past that wouldn't trigger like that.
Yes.
That wouldn't respond that way. Yeah. And so we have to, I don't like it when people become obsessed about what's wrong with me, God. But I do think that it's healthy to always stay in a position with him, asking him to reveal the truth about who you are.
Yes.
Because see, God is not negative. So what he's going to do is he's going to reveal to you. This is interesting. If you go to a psychologist, they're going to talk to you about your life and everything, and then they may reveal to you how you're not operating functionally correct right now.
Okay.
And they'll point those things out, and then you work to get those things dealt with.
Okay.
What God does when we say, Lord, reveal who I am, is he actually reveals to you who you should be, who he made you to be before the foundations of the earth.
Right.
And in that, then it becomes like this mirror that you can look in, and he is our mirror.
Okay.
And you look into him, and you see the difference between who he says you are, how he sees you, who he says you are, and who he created you to be, and how you really are.
Okay.
Then you see the difference.
Okay.
And that's what the whole trust thing and faith in God alone, just faith in God, not for things. Faith in God is all about. See, he designed this realm, this world, that when you get all this, if you focus on your soul, everything else is added unto you. Everything else you need. He said, don't worry about what you're going to wear, what you're going to eat, where you're going to sleep, because he understood that the whole plan of the enemy was going to be to jack up our self-image. And I don't mean like self-esteem as in the worldly sense, but our self-image is really the image that we were created in the beginning.
Okay.
That's really who we really are.
Right.
Everything else that has affected our lives so that we can't walk in that or see that or accept that is the twistedness that happens through life.
Right.
So when I go to the Lord and I say, Lord, you know, I just want you to show me what my issue is with my mom. Why don't I want to do this? Or why is it hard for me to do that? Or why do I feel like this every time I have to have a conversation?
Right.
He doesn't go, well, see, you this, and you need this, and this, and this, and this. What he shows me is what he has available to me.
Okay.
In other words, in those moments, that's what he reveals to me. You don't have to live like this.
Right.
And I'm like, really? Because that's the thing I'm taking it to him. I'm like, I'm miserable.
Yeah.
And then he says, there's a cure. I'm like, sweet, let's do it.
Okay.
But I'm not going to tell him let's do it if I don't trust him.
Right.
Because I'm going to tell you, let's do it can be painful.
Oh my goodness.
And then you got to look at yourself and see all the ugly and everything else. But you know what? It is the most beautiful process because when you come out of it, you are free. You are completely free in whatever area that is that you've been asking him for.
Okay, now see, that's what's deep about what you said, because it's not a situation of freedom such that, okay, now in this situation with your mother, you'll never have to go through that again. See, God goes deep down where it splits marrow and bone. He's going to take you straight to the root of that thing.
Yeah.
And from the root, he's going to heal you from the root of the matter that's causing the surface situation that had you going to him in the first place. So that what we're talking about here is an instance where, for instance, Susan has submitted herself to God in an area where he is not majoring on all of the crap that made her messed up, but he's going to the root of how that thing that made her messed up has entrenched itself into her character. Now, at any point that mess has entrenched itself into her character, it's morphed her out of the character that God created her to be. Why is that important? That's important because you have got to be fully who God created you to be in order to accomplish your purpose for being. You have got to be fully who God created you to be in order to utilize all of the tools he gave you to accomplish your purpose in the master plan. What are the repercussions? If we fail to be all he created us to be and cannot step along our path of purpose and stay in our master plan lane, then other people in the master plan suffer because we're not in our place. Because we're not all we need to be to accomplish our purpose. So this is not about who's a divine connection for you as much as it's about who are you a divine connection for. This is not about having everything, prospered as your soul prospers so that you can have a Mercedes, even though that might be something God chooses to bless you with. It's about you having your soul intact and being fully who he created you to be so that you can accomplish the master plan. Okay? And I say in the book, the path of purpose is paved with healing. Healing goes as deep as the wound or as deep as you let it. And what we've done, a lot of us, we've gone through life with surface band-aids on this deep gaping wound. And because it's crusted over on the surface, we think we're healed. Well, it's what's festering underneath that crusted over surface that God's after. And when Susan got free from that situation, he took it to the bone marrow, the bone of the soul, so to speak. And he uprooted things out of her character, okay, that were morphing her out of the power of who he created her to be. So it was more than just that instance, that situation she took to him. When she took that to him and she submitted to him, he was going to get it at the root. Am I right or wrong, Susan?
That's exactly right. And then you don't realize that it changes everything else in your life. Not just that. You know, what I saw was the effect of it in my relationship with my mother. Okay, but that affected everything in my life, and you see your whole life shifts. It's like clunk, you know, like that cog fits. It just shifts, and you're like, wow. I mean, you know, like the Bible says, I looked at, you know, people sing that song, I looked at my hands and they were new. I looked at my feet, they looked new too. You know, that's almost how you feel every time you go through these things. And you know, and I mean, who would not become addicted to God taking them into the fullness of who He created them to be? Which I'm more addicted to that than I am getting in line with my purpose, but there's no way to do one without the other.
There you go. Now you're talking.
You know, and so whatever whatever the thing is you know, you can want to fulfill your purpose in life, but you're going to have to go through these processes.
Yeah.
Because ministry, people minister all the time. They study the Bible. They use the giftings that God gave them, and a lot of times they don't have any character built up in them.
Right.
And God didn't create a half package, and it doesn't function well as a half package. And so even those people that are walking in their giftings are not going to fulfill their true purposes if they don't allow this process to take place.
We have to end that conversation right there. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I trust that you will join us again for the continuing conversation regarding Say What. Until then, I'll catch you on the backside.